Imagine placing your most valuable possession on the ground, pouring fuel over it, and striking a flame. Not because it is broken. Not because an enemy is coming. Because it matters. Your best weapon. Your finest clothing. A decorated wagon. A house full of tools. Objects that took months of labor, rare materials, dangerous journeys, and generations of knowledge to create. Then everyone stands watching while the value disappears into smoke. To a modern brain, this looks insane. Valuable things are supposed to be protected, inherited, traded, or hidden behind a password nobody remembers. But across human history, people repeatedly destroyed objects precisely because those objects were valuable. The obvious explanation is religion. Ancient people believed the dead needed equipment in another world, so possessions were burned to travel with them. That may be part of it. Except it does not explain why living communities also burned buildings, shattered usable vessels, damaged prestigious weapons, and destroyed wealth when nobody was being buried. It does not explain why the destruction was often public, carefully staged, and more complicated than simply throwing something into a fire. The flames were doing more than removing objects. They were changing relationships in 1922. The diplomat Ahmad ibn Fadlan watched a funeral among the Rus on the Volga River. A wealthy leader was dressed in expensive clothing with gold buttons, placed on a ship surrounded by food, weapons, animals, carpets, and cushions, and then burned. The ceremony consumed equipment, labor, livestock, and the ship itself. This was not disposal. It was an enormous public loss performed with precision. Think about what the survivors were proving. Anyone can claim a dead leader was important. Burning a functioning ship makes the claim expensive. That difference matters. Words can be faked. Cost is harder to fake. When a community destroys something useful in front of witnesses, it creates what researchers sometimes call a costly signal. The act says this person, God, ancestor, alliance, or social rule matters more than the wealth being sacrificed. The greater the loss, the harder the statement is to ignore. It is the ancient equivalent of making a promise by setting your wallet on fire. Ridiculous, unless everyone understands why you are doing it. But status alone is too simple. If these ceremonies were merely rich families showing off, they could have displayed the objects and kept them afterward. A sword can impress people for years. A burned sword performs once. That single performance may have been the point. In 2019, archaeologists Sascha van der Vaart-Versthoef and Robert Schumann examined elite Iron Age burials from the Low Countries and Central Europe. These graves contained weapons, bronze vessels, decorated wagons, and horse gear carried across hundreds of kilometers. Yet the objects and bodies were not always preserved as neat collections. They were burned, broken, fragmented, and selectively buried. The destruction turned private possessions into public memory. Before the ceremony, a wagon belonged to a person. Afterward, no heir could simply drive away with it. No rival could capture it. No ambitious cousin could wear the dead leader's equipment and quietly inherit the authority attached to it. Fire settled the argument. This is where the story becomes less mystical and more political. Valuable objects do not only hold material worth. They hold claims. A crown claims rule. A weapon claims violence. A house claims land. Jewelry can claim marriage, lineage, rank, or obligation. When the owner dies, loses power, or leaves, those claims become unstable. Who gets the object? Who gets the identity attached to it? Who becomes dangerous by possessing it? Burning the object can prevent the wrong answer. It can also release a community from a relationship that has ended. Humans do this emotionally even now. People burn letters after a breakup, delete photographs, destroy uniforms, or throw away gifts they could easily sell. The object is still useful. That is exactly why destroying it feels powerful. You are not removing matter. You are declaring that the relationship has changed. Ancient fire made that declaration visible to everyone. The same logic appears outside funerals. In 2019, Marcus Eberl and colleagues described an 8th century Maya building at Tamarindito in Guatemala where people broke ceramic vessels, scattered pieces across rooms, added complete tools and exotic artifacts, burned the deposits, covered them, and dismantled parts of the structure. Archaeologists call patterns like this termination rituals, although the name can sound cleaner than the event probably felt. The building was not merely abandoned. It was ended. That distinction is uncomfortable because a house is normally protected from fire. It stores food, shelters children, anchors memory, and proves that labor invested yesterday will still matter tomorrow. Deliberately burning or dismantling it reverses the basic logic of survival. So why do it? Because some places become socially dangerous even when they remain physically useful. A dead ruler's residence may support a rival claim. A defeated temple may preserve the authority of an old god. A household may carry memories of conflict, disease, betrayal, or death. Destroying the structure can close access to that past while creating a controlled beginning. Or at least that is the interpretation. The skeptical explanation deserves real weight. Fire destroys evidence. Archaeologists often excavate only fragments. A burned building may have caught accidentally. Valuable goods may have been looted before the flames. Broken objects may reflect collapsing walls, later farming, or centuries of pressure underground. Even when destruction was deliberate, motive does not survive like pottery does. Ash does not explain itself. And researchers can be tempted to call anything strange ritual, which is sometimes archaeology's polite way of saying something happened, and nobody left instructions. That skepticism is necessary. But accidents are messy in predictable ways. When objects are deliberately selected, placed in unusual combinations, broken before burning, scattered in patterned locations, covered, and followed by the careful dismantling of a building, coincidence begins carrying too much weight. The sequence becomes evidence. Ancient people were not randomly wasting resources. They were using destruction as a technology. Fire transformed solid objects into smoke, heat, ash, and fragments. It made wealth impossible to reclaim. It allowed many people to witness the same irreversible moment. It separated before from after with a line nobody could pretend not to see. That is why burning could express grief, devotion, status, fear, political control, purification, revenge, or renewal. The same physical act could carry different meanings because the deeper mechanism was always similar. Make the change permanent. There was also a brutal social advantage. Destruction could stop inheritance from concentrating too much power. If elite goods vanished with their owner, successors had to build new alliances instead of simply opening a storage room and becoming important. Wealth had to be earned, gifted, gathered, or sacrificed again. The ceremony consumed property, but it reproduced the social system. And sometimes the most valuable possession was not gold, metal, or livestock. It was memory. A burned house could become a sacred ruin. A destroyed weapon could become proof of loyalty. A ship disappearing in flames could turn a dead leader into a story large enough to survive when the object could not. The material thing died so the meaning could become harder to kill. The honest answer is that ancient humans did not burn valuables for one universal reason. Some hoped objects would accompany the dead. Some displayed power. Some neutralized dangerous claims. Some ended buildings, identities, or relationships. Some may have acted from motives that archaeology will never recover. But the behavior was not the opposite of value. It depended on value. Bring that back to the object you imagined burning. The shocking part is not that ancient people could destroy something precious. You already understand that impulse whenever an object feels too meaningful to keep, too dangerous to inherit, or too painful to leave unchanged. They simply made the feeling public. And fed it to the fire.